In 2021, the CDC spent almost $250,000 on solar-powered picnic tables. The CDC at the time was telling people to socially distance with masks and basically forcing a vaccine that many Americans didn't want. So what use would its employees have for this new picnic table that has quite the price tag?
Yeah, it's quite expensive, and the social distancing guidelines suggested they shouldn't be seated at that table while they were spending $237,000.
Look at those seats. Look at those seats. That's not social distancing.
No, they're quite close. There's a close proximity of those seats to the other person.
Yeah, real quick, I've just got
Imagine
a short
this.
amount of
Your tax dollars are spent on public benefits, but some money goes to things like solar-powered picnic tables. Yes, you heard that right. Today, we're diving into outrageous government spending habits. Hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping revelations. First up, the CDC. You'd think during a global pandemic they'd focus on health and safety, right? In 2021, the CDC spent $238,000 on solar-powered picnic tables.
Real quick, I've just got a short amount of time yet. I'd like to ask, just basically, just for the general audience, is $238,000 spent on solar-powered picnic tables at the CDC appropriate? I think the American people thinks that's disgusting. Is $700,000 spent by the SEC for their New York regional office conference room appropriate of taxpayer dollars? I don't think so. What about $6.5 million spent on high-end furniture to redecorate the EPE office? No. And then $284,000 in Herman Miller furniture for FEMA's headquarters conference center, an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars? I would argue not.
Let that sink in. These tables were meant to promote social distancing, but the tables were too close together. Doesn't scream pandemic protocol, does it? And employees were working remotely. So who used these $238,000 picnic tables? It's not just the CDC caught in questionable spending. The SEC spent $700,000 on a conference room, a $6.5 million redesign of the EPE office, and FEMA's $284,000 on Herman Miller furniture, all funded by your tax dollars. It's easy to be outraged when you see these numbers, but why does this keep happening? Why do we keep seeing our money go towards overpriced furniture and tables?
Shows a disgusting amount of federal spending on furniture, which is what you talked about. So how did you go about finding the Biden administration spent about $1 billion per year on furniture while federal buildings sat empty during COVID and federal workers work from home?
Yeah, what we do, Chairman, is we have access to all federal spending through usaspending.gov, and that's a bill that I helped pass back in 2006. So we're able to do keyword searches and look at furniture, look for vendors even, and identify and keyword search things like recliners to identify and understand how much the federal government is spending on furniture. And it's really a scope of government problem issue, as I mentioned in my opening statement, is that when we decide to have a large scope, there is going to be a big cost of furniture. So it's a very useful way to think about and assess whether we ought to have this number of federal buildings.
Yeah, Mr. Hart, we appreciate
overpriced furniture and tables no one uses. Federal buildings were empty, yet the government spent big on unnecessary expenses. With financial struggles, how does this make sense? Millions wasted on high-end furniture and unnecessary upgrades. Meanwhile, businesses are closing and taxpayers are footing the bill. Government spending needs a serious overhaul. But how can we hold them accountable? The answer might lie in transparency and public pressure. So what's the solution?
And I thank the witnesses for their testimony. Mr. Maroney, the title of your testimony is Reducing the Government's Holdings Could Generate Substantial Savings, and I agree with that. And thanks to the Trump administration, we're finally seeing some savings, $400 million on leases, according to the administration. Do you think the government's excess properties exist in part because federal agencies and the bureaucrats who run them have no incentive to move or to give up their space? Just why won't these agencies co-locate and downsize?
So there's a number of reasons, but certainly cultural reticence to sharing space is something we've identified in the past. Also, inertia, for lack of a better word. It's a space you've already had, and there isn't as much incentive to move. It costs money to move out of space at times, and agencies haven't always put that up front. There's a number of other reasons possibly too, but certainly those are both valid reasons that they've brought up before. Those are reasons that have been brought up before.
Right, except their actions are different. They certainly were ready to jump out of this building and leased a very expensive building on Pennsylvania Avenue.
First, we need more transparency in government spending. Platforms like usaspending.gov show fund allocation, but we need to hold agencies accountable. Public involvement is key. Let your representatives know how you feel. Every time you raise your voice, it has the power to create change. So there you have it, the truth behind government spending and the price tag of some seriously questionable decisions. What do you think? Is $238,000 on picnic tables too much? Or is there more to the story we're missing? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
Recent presidents couldn't overcome that bureaucratic inertia. Yet President Trump and DOGE ended almost 700 leases in just a few months. That's unbelievable. Has any other administration acted so quickly to reduce the federal footprint that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that much needed though. Mr. Maroney, your testimony states that a GAO covert operation last year was successful about half the time in sneaking prohibited items past the guards and into federal buildings. I'm really interested in that. What sort of items did you sneak in? What dangers does this vulnerability pose?
Right. So we snuck in 3 different items: a multi-purpose tool with a knife, a baton, like a baton you could use to attack someone with, and pepper spray. All those are prohibited items. All those are things you could cause real harm if you wanted to. And like you said, about half the time we were able to get that through. So that raises concerns. We only did 27 tests and got through in half the time. That suggests other items could be getting through at a greater level.
But you got through half the time in 27 tests.
Correct. And that also comports with FPS's, the Federal Protective Service's own covert testing program.
Wow, that's definitely terrifying. Thank you for that. I have a lot of death threats, and several people have been convicted and served time in prison for planning to murder me. So I always appreciate the efforts on every single aspect of security to make sure that people that work within the federal government and the Capitol and visitors as well are safe. So thank you. Mr. Hart, I appreciate the work your organization has done in making the American people aware how the government spends Americans' hard-earned money, including this chart behind
Drop
me
your
here.
thoughts in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like and share this video if you think more people should be aware of these issues. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time with more eye-opening stories. So there you have it, the truth behind government spending and the price tag of some questionable decisions. What do you think? Is $238,000 on picnic tables too much? Or is there more to the story we're missing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to like and share. Thanks for watching.